Okay, now we're going to get started with setting up our system. So the first thing you're going to want to make sure you have available is Python on your system, a version of Python 3. If you don't have it, you can go to python.org and download it and install it. But if you're using Linux like I am or Mac OS, it's probably already installed on your system. If you're on Windows, you're probably going to have to install that. So go ahead and get that installed on your system. Okay, once you've got Python installed on your system, we're going to need to download yolov5, which is version 5 of YOLO, which stands for, it's not YOLO like Wall Street bets. This is YOLO, you only look once. So you're going to want to pull this entire Git repository. I have a link down below, but it's basically yolov5 by Ultralytics. And to download this, you can either use HTTPS or SSH in my case. Copy this link here, go to your terminal, make sure you have Git installed, and we're going to do git clone, and we're going to put in that repository. Hit enter, and that will clone the entire repository. So I'm going to jump the video ahead after this downloads. Okay, yolov5 is downloaded. I'm going to go into the directory. So let's see here. I'm going to go into my yolov5 directory. And inside of yolov5, you're going to see a lot of stuff. You're going to see some Python files. Don't worry, we'll explain this a little bit later. But you're going to see a file called requirements.txt. This file is essentially it's a file that tells Python's package manager pip all of the dependencies to run yolov5 properly. So these are all the dependencies like NumPy, OpenCV. So you're going to need all those exact versions that are required. So before we install these packages, though, I highly recommend that you create a virtual environment. So go back to the directory outside of yolov5. So here's my yolov5 folder. I'm working in my Mario AI folder. And I'm going to create a Python virtual environment. That way I can use this virtual environment when I'm doing my yolov5 work to make sure I have the exact dependencies that yolov5 wants. I highly recommend you do this for almost every type of Python project. And you can very easily create a virtual environment by running the command python-m, which stands for module. We're going to run the venv, the virtual environment module, and then you're going to give it a name, and I always call it venv. So this will take a minute. I'll jump ahead. Okay, it's already done. So if you look now, I have a folder called venv. So in my case, I'm going to want to activate this by going inside of the folder. There's a binary called activate or a shell script. Activate. Okay, so now you can see I'm using the Mario AI Python. I can confirm that by using which Python, and you can see that it's here. It's in my Mario bin Python. So I'm in this virtual environment, okay? Again, why are we doing this? So that everything we install from yolov5 is installed on this installation, if you will, of Python, and that way it doesn't mess up with anything else that we're doing that has different dependencies. So now that this is activated, make sure you activate it on your system. With Windows, the command is a little bit different. I forget what it is. But you might have to run like a .bat file, a .bat file if I remember correctly. But it should be in the same folder. So if you go into the venv folder, you go into bin, which stands for binary, there should be something called like activate or activate.bat, something like that for Windows, guys. Okay. Go back to this folder. Okay, so now what we're going to do is after you've activated that Python virtual environment, we're going to go into our yolov5 folder, and we're going to need to install all the dependencies. So this is really easy. That's why they have this requirements.txt folder. This will automatically install everything. So to do that, you're going to use pip install -r, which means user requirements file, and then put in the name of the file, which is requirements.txt. You can see it auto-completes because that's how everything basically is. Hit enter, and this will automatically start to install and download all the packages. So I'm going to skip ahead. Okay, congratulations. You've pretty much installed yolov5 at this point. We've got all of the requirements installed on our system. So the next thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to install our annotator tool. If you remember, I showed you in the last video, Label Studio. So Label Studio is actually pretty easy to install as well. So if you go to labelstudio.io, they have a quick start guide. I'll leave a link down below. But essentially you can follow these commands. So we're going to run pip install label-studio. This will download the entire package from PyPy from using the pip repository. Make sure you're in your same the same virtual environment. That's better off if you can do that. So you're going to run pip install label-studio, and after this installs, I'll jump ahead. Okay, you're going to notice that it's installing quite a lot of packages, and there's things like Django in here and stuff. If you're not familiar, Django is a web framework for Python, and the reason is this is actually going to be run as a web server. So this is actually going to be a web application that you're going to self-host on your computer. So that's why it's installing so many packages, because it's essentially an entire web application all rolled up into one. So let me jump the video ahead here. Okay, congratulations, you've now installed the application. So they give a very nice explanation here. It's very simple to start. You're just going to run this command now, which should be, you should be able to run this from your terminal, Label Studio Start. And as it explains here, this will actually create a Django web application that will run on your local machine that you can access on port 8080. So let me start that up. Okay, you can see it's starting up the web server just like a Django application. And once you see this part here where it's running a development server, you can then click on this link right here, or you can just go to localhost port 8080. In my case, it's 8081. And you will see a basically what looks like a web page that you have to log into. Now, you might be confused. Why am I, what am I logging into? Don't worry. This web application that you see is basically a web application running on your own computer. So anything you enter in here is only going to be stored in your own database on your own computer. This is not a web application connected to the internet. And don't worry about this, your connection is not secure. Again, you're just self-hosting a development server. But what this does is this basically acts as a nice interface for us to do our annotations. So go ahead and just create a credential that will let you log in basically to the server. It doesn't have to be extremely secure. Okay, if you're able to log in, that means that everything was set up and working properly. So you should be able to play around with this and try to create a new project. Now, we're not going to get into the annotation in this video. I'm just trying to make sure that all of your tooling is set up properly. But you can go ahead and make sure it's working by creating a test. We'll just call this our test project. And we can go to data import. You can try to upload an image. So let me try to upload an image. Okay, I'll upload this. And if I go to labeling setup, you'll see many different options, which we'll talk about here. So as long as you're starting to see all this stuff, it looks like it's working, that's good. And this web application is actually going to be a application that we can do all of our annotations and export them so that yolov5 can perform training. So if you've successfully done all this work, if you've successfully installed yolov5 and Label Studio, that means that you have all of the tooling now that you need in order to actually start building, training neural networks. So that's the end of the tooling video. In the next video, we're going to actually start creating our data set. So I will see you in the next video.